It's time for the CBC News Night. This time check is brought to you by Fruiter. The time is now 7 p.m.
In our top stories tonight, more support for efforts to get the UK and the EU to discuss reparations for countries in the region. The BWA promises St. John residents improved water supply. The Ministry of Education outlines protocols ahead of the Common Entrance exam next week. And in sports, the Tridents bulk up in their defense of the CPL title.
Broadcasting from our studios in the Pine St. Michael, this is CBC News Night, starting now.
Good evening, I'm Lisa Broom. Thanks for joining us. In our top story tonight, Prime Minister Amor Motley has pledged her support for ongoing efforts to bring the United Kingdom and the European Union to the negotiating table to discuss reparations for countries in the region. Ms. Motley, who is also the chair of the Prime Ministerial Subcommittee on Reparation, addressed the issue during a media engagement hosted by the Caricom Reparations Commission entitled From Apology to Action, Caricom's call for reparation justice. Ms. Motley says small states throughout the region started at an economic disadvantage even though they gained independence.
I do believe that the combination of the validity of the reparations argument, the evidence that clearly shows that there was no bank account left with us at the point of independence, there was no development compact, and far from that, there was the legitimate expectation by our people that independent governments would right the wrongs of the past and would do so quickly by giving people opportunity in this part of the world. When we begin to understand all of that, then we understand that the combination of the appropriateness of the reparations argument as well as the reality of our economic implosion that has taken place as a result of the global pandemic.
Meanwhile, Chairman of the Caricom Reparations Commission and Vice-Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, said the impact of slavery on the current chronic and non-communicable diseases situation is undeniable. Noting that Britain has left behind a pandemic of chronic diseases in the region, Sir Hilary says slaves were forced to consume a diet of what they produced, sugar.
In this part of the world, sugar was consumed not as a sweetener. Sugar was consumed as a meal, as part of the dietary plan. We now have this enormous pandemic sweeping through this region. Billions of dollars are spent in this region each year dealing with the consequences and the legacies of an enforced diet of sugar and salt to which the people of the region are now addicted.
Residents of St. John and other parishes plagued by water issues may be getting some significant relief by early next year. The timeline provided by Acting General Manager of the Barbados Water Authority, Dr. John Mwanza, during a town hall meeting in Gull Hill, St. John on Sunday. Lorna Jones has more.
As to transfer water from Vineyard into St. John, it is a 5 to 6 month project. So we will get that water here by December, January.
Acting General Manager of the Barbados Water Authority, Dr. John Mwanza, provided the update during a town hall meeting in Gull Hill, St. John, hosted by MP Charles Griffith. This particular project to divert water from Vineyard St. Philip to Bowmanston is one of a number of efforts the BWA is currently undertaking. As Director of Engineering, Charles Leslie explains, another is an ongoing program of mains replacement.
All of these replacements that we are doing in terms of mains replacement, these are mains that we have identified over the years have been giving us problems. Even with the existing water that we have in the system, what we've found is that every time we do leakage detection, we recognize that in those specific areas we have bursts. So when we do get water into the system, it leaks out.
The issue of drainage wells through which surface runoff enters the water system was also raised. Dr. Mwanza says many are blocked by vegetation and located on private land.
And the private owners are responsible for clearing and cleaning those drainage wells. we actually are looking at how we could get them to do that.
Water Resources Minister Wilfred Abrams says the BWA will also be focusing on taking a more customer-centered approach.
Starting this week, there'll be training for the persons who are frontline people for the Barbados Water Authority, how to deal with customers, how to respond to people's frustrations, what is the appropriate response, how to get the information without being offensive. There are members of the union here, there's some members of the Barbados Water Authority here, right? It is a work in progress. We're not going to get it all right in one, but we continue to work at it to try to improve your customer experience.
He says customers can look forward to improvements in that area immediately. Lorna Jones, CBC News.
Thanks, Lorna. Physical distancing over and above what is currently required and the wearing of face masks throughout the test are just some of the protocols being put in place for next week's Common Entrance examination. Acting Chief Education Officer Joy Adamson outlined the plan for the test on CPC TV8's Morning Barbados. Well over 3,000 students from public and private primary schools have been preparing to write the July 14th test. Acting Chief Education Officer Joy Adamson says it will take place at the 21 secondary schools across the island, as well as the Samuel Jackman Prescott Institute for Technology. She says the protocols have been circulated to each of the centres, and they begin even before students start to write the exam.
All persons entering the school compound and the examination room are required to wear face masks. The security guards at the entrance will be checking all persons entering that compound and recording the adults, because we know we would have a record of the students as well when they get into the examination room. Principals have been instructed to implement measures to avoid congestion at the entrances and the assembly points where they assemble the students to actually go in.
Ms. Adamson explains what will take place once the students get into the room where the test will be conducted.
We are maintaining the 3 feet physical distancing on the outside as required by the Ministry of Health and Wellness, but we have the desks set up still at 6 feet apart. Now, this is to allow the students, if they get uncomfortable during the exam, that they can take their mask off. But we are requiring that if you are speaking, that you must have your mask on. So in the exam room, the desks are placed 6 feet apart, but we are practicing the 3 feet distancing when you are outside.
There will be a strict drop-off policy on the morning of the test, since no one will be allowed to congregate outside of the various centres.
You will bring your child or ward and you will leave them at the gate. The secondary schools and the SJPI will have persons there who will be supervising the students and taking the students from the gate and directing them as to where they have to go.
Ms. Adamson says with the exam expected to be finished by 1 p.m., parents should be in place to collect their children by 1:15. Class 4 students of the Lawrence T. Gay Memorial Primary School, who are due to write the Common Entrance examination in the coming days, are now better prepared after receiving exam kits. Parliamentary Representative for St. Michael West Central, Ian Gooding Edgell, presented the kits recently, upholding his annual tradition of distributing the items. He also praised the teachers and the staff for their commitment to students at this time.
Oftentimes we do not salute the teachers at schools, and especially those at the primary level. And I can tell you, because I maintain a very close relationship with the school, that the teachers have gone above and beyond in helping to prepare these students, as they have done in the past, in preparing for the examination. And that says a lot about the quality of teaching that we have in Barbados. It says a lot about the quality of the teaching service generally. And of course, we have a committed principal at the Lawrence T. Gay School who, again, she goes above and beyond, like teachers, like the ancillary staff, to ensure that the students are feel accommodated and that they're very well taken care of.
Both staff and students thank the MP for the items.
These packages will be useful as we sit the common entrance exam.
Last year, of course, you were there as well, and then this year, even though we are not at LTG, you still found the time to find us where we are. So we're very appreciative of the packets that you have given the children, and we pray that you will continue to be there for us.
The government of Barbados has been lauded by UNICEF for its handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. UNICEF's representative for the Eastern Caribbean area, Dr. Alois Kamaraji, expressed their sentiments this morning during a joint UNICEF and USAID presentation to the Ministry of Education. 60 schools are expected to benefit from the donation, which consists of electronic tablets and personal protective equipment.
The international community, in particular UNICEF, we really recognize and commend the leadership in Barbados in the way they have been managing the COVID-19 from the outset. When I attend regional meetings with my friends, UNICEF representative across Latin America and the Caribbean, when I present the trend of the curve showing that Caribbean countries have had these curves flattening with reduction of the incidence of new cases of COVID-19, they didn't believe me.
Meanwhile, Education Minister Santia Bradshaw has thanked UNICEF for its contribution to education here in Barbados, especially in the mid of COVID-19.
On every occasion that we have called on Dr. Alois and his team, they have responded positively and always, trying to assist us to go beyond the call of duty to help the students of Barbados to meet their full potential. And so COVID-19, while it was affecting everyone across the world, Barbados was no different. And when we reached out to UNICEF and indicated the challenges we were having, before we even got to devices or to PPE, we also sat with them to discuss the protocols that were necessary for the schools, both them and the Pan American Health Organization. And I say that because, the assistance that was given in terms of the guidance, obviously it was allowing us as a ministry to meet the international standards.
Several secondary schools across the island recently benefited from another donation of tablets as efforts continue to create more equity in students accessing devices. This time around, the donor was the University of the West Indies Open Campus, which presented several tablets to secondary school principals. It was all part of the Open Campus's Preparing Today for Tomorrow's Challenge initiative. Speaking during the brief ceremony, Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Education, Senator Romel Springer, says it's important to continuously ensure that students at all levels have access to technology. He says in some households, students have to share a single device, sometimes during the same time frame. So every tablet that is acquired helps to bridge the gap.
When I speak to access to technology, I'm not only referring to access to devices, but also access to internet connectivity. These are two areas where we saw a lack. There's a need in that regard. So I'm thankful that persons or entities such as the Open Campus who see it fit to donate in order to help us to, as I put it, bridge that gap, that digital divide that exists in Barbados.
And coming up on Newsnight, water sport operators in the Bahamas want to get back to work after months of beach closures. But first, here's a tip from Cooperators General Insurance.
This tip of the day is brought to you by Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. Insurance the way you want it to be.
Before the arrival of a hurricane, ensure that you have a working radio, flashlight, and a stock of the appropriate batteries. Cooperators General Insurance, helping you to be prepared this hurricane season.
Guyana's former Attorney General Anil Nandlal is hoping the Caribbean Court of Justice will overturn the Court of Appeal's ruling that the word valid has to be used to determine the votes cast for the purposes of the election of a president. He expressed the view as the CCJ prepares to rule on an appeal that can determine the outcome of the March 2nd elections. He was speaking on TV8's The People's Business.
Hopefully will upset or overrule the Court of Appeal's ruling. Perhaps they will vacate the perverse report presented by the Chief Elections Officer, and the matter will go back to GCOM for another direction to be given to the Chief Elections Officer for him to declare the correct results. Hopefully, to the letter now that they will send him, they will attach the documents that he must use and the actual totals which he must use to form the basis of that report which he has to present. Once that report is presented, then the results will be declared based upon that report, because that is what the law mandates to be done.
Political analyst Peter Wickham says he's taken aback by the entire situation since the election took place within established rules that governed previous elections.
They basically determine that the person that got the most votes, or the party that got the most votes, wins. It's a very simple arithmetical situation to come to. What is happening then is unprecedented. I tried to imagine, and I said this in a conversation this week, if the returning officer in Barbados took leave of his senses to decide, I have a count here that shows that one party won. But I'm telling you that based on my own observations, ignore the fact that my scrutineers certify validity of so many votes. I personally think that what we have is another situation, right? I guarantee you, no sooner than those words fell from his lips, he would be taken off to the psychiatric hospital in one of the white vans that will be waiting outside. It's not something that will be tolerated in any other Caribbean country.
The CCJ will hand down its ruling on Wednesday at 3 p.m. Water sport operators in the Bahamas are pleading with the government to speed up the process of getting them back to work after months of beach closures. We have a report from Our News.
With beaches and parks now reopened and tourists making their way back to the Bahamas, water sports operators remain on the shoreline. 10 Summers water sports operator Reno DeVoe Jr. told Our News while he and a few others have side jobs that help them to make ends meet, he is afraid that others who depend on the industry to provide for their families may resort to more drastic measures.
The side hustle helps along with our jet ski to do on the beach, so you cut that out, then it causes a lot of chaos because jet ski operators are used to a bit of good money like through the week and through the day. So that cut is going to cause a lot of different type of crimes. Not saying we're bad people, but some people have their family to feed and some people would go to the end of the world for their family.
DeVoe is calling on authorities to simply let water sports operators know what is needed of them, as they have no issue with abiding by new rules put in place due to the COVID-19 pandemic.